Patrick Mahomes too, one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time and undoubtedly the best of this generation, just led his team to an absolute disaster in the Super Bowl. Not only was it one of the worst Super Bowl performances in history, but this single loss may have ended his chances of ever being considered the GOAT. Let me explain why. Before we even start debating whether Mahomes can be the GOAT, we have to ask, why was he even in the conversation to consider him the GOAT because of his longevity, stats, or even what he did for Chicago? It's because he had the most dominant in their own right, but none of them ever won 3 championships in a row. The only player who had done that was Bill Russell, and back then, being black was practically illegal in the NBA. Jordan separated himself by accomplishing something the greats before him never could. Mahomes had a similar path to GOAT status. If he could do something Tom Brady never did, then he would have a legitimate case as the greatest. But as you saw in this Super Bowl, that didn't happen. Now, let's compare Mahomes to the other 2 quarterbacks in the GOAT conversation, Joe Montana and Tom Brady. Mahomes has now had 2 of the worst Super Bowl performances between all 3 of them. Joe Montana, undefeated in Super Bowls. Tom Brady, never lost a Super Bowl by more than 1 possession. Mahomes has now, when LeBron James was the clear favorite and completely crumbled under pressure. The difference? LeBron redeemed himself in 2016 with an all-time comeback. Mahomes, unless he comes back from a 25+ dominance, might be nearing its expiration date. Why? Travis Kelce is aging. Andy Reid and Steve Spagnuolo are getting older. The Chiefs' salary cap is tightening. Other teams are getting stronger. There's a new wave of young, hungry teams coming for the throne. The Eagles' core is locked in for years. The Texans have one of the nastiest young rosters in the league. The Ravens have Lamar Jackson in his prime. The Commanders are only getting better. At some point, these teams will break through. History shows us that when Mahomes loses a Super Bowl, he doesn't return the next year. Look at the 2020-21 season. Mahomes lost in the Super Bowl, and the next year, he choked a 21-3 lead in the AFC Championship to Joe Burrow. That was one of the rare times we saw Mahomes get outplayed, and now that teams have found ways to stop him, they're going to game plan against him even harder. I don't need to explain who Tom Brady is, but in case you've been living under a rock, he has 7 rings. Mahomes' argument for GOAT status was never about having more rings than Brady. It was about having a more dominant run in a shorter time. But after this loss, that argument is dead. Now, Mahomes has only 2 paths to surpass Brady. Win 8 Super Bowls, which is nearly impossible. 3-peat, which has never been done in the modern era. If Mahomes wins 7 rings or less, he will always be seen as inferior to Brady. Why? Brady is 2-0 against him head-to-head. Even if they're tied in rings, that record will always be the deciding factor. And finally, the reason Mahomes might never be the GOAT. Taylor Swift. Just kidding, or am I? At the end of the day, Mahomes is still an all-time great, and his career isn't over. But this Super Bowl loss will haunt him forever. The GOAT conversation isn't about talent, it's about legacy. And after this game, Mahomes' legacy just took a major hit.